They are, in effect, still trapped in a history which they do not understand. And until they understand it, they cannot be released from it. They have had to believe for many years and for innumerable reasons that black men are inferior to white men. Many of them indeed know better, but as you will discover, people find it very difficult to act on what they know. To act is to be committed, and to be committed is to be in danger. In this case, the danger in the minds of most white Americans is the loss of their identity. James Baldwin wrote that in a letter to his nephew in The Fire Next Time. And it is the thesis for my new series, American Lies. My name's Amy. This is a long-form series on the American lies told to white America to keep us separate from our black and brown and indigenous brothers and sisters. And until we understand those lies, until we understand how they've been embedded into our society, we will not find the power that we need in the numbers to actually get a workers' movement, to get the rights that we all so deserve, to make the American dream real. This is part 1 of a million, and we're starting with the biggest lie. And that lie is, if you're white in America, you're better than anyone else. It doesn't matter how poor you are. This is a lie that has been nurtured and reaffirmed over the past 400 plus years. And when there's pushback against it, the reaction is swift and it's painful. This starts in the earliest days of colonization of the New World. We have white plantation owners who are European, who are buying people off of the shores of Africa, who are breaking treaties with indigenous people, who are stealing land and genociding the indigenous at the same time. And then one day they wake up and they're outnumbered by very strong African men and women and their children. This is by design, as we know. One plantation owner could own many other people. So they make a call to the European settlers and the explorers and the second sons, and they say, come to the New World. Come here to the land of milk and honey where you can be wealthy too. But in my opinion, from what I have learned from history, and you'll find all the books and all the resources, I have a list in the description, you'll find that they probably didn't actually want these people to join them in the upper echelons of this aristocracy that they had created. They didn't want nobility or titles, but they wanted a separation and they wanted to be at the very tip top. So instead of allowing these people to join them in actual spaces of wealth and prosperity, they used them. They used European colonists and immigrants and settlers. And the big lie is this: you shouldn't have to work these jobs that we have enslaved people to work. You're too good. You're a fine, upstanding white gentleman. One of the such men who push back on this idea of separating white indentured servants and free black men in the United States is Nathaniel Bacon. Bacon's rebellion in 1676 is one of the first multiracial moves for organizing in the New World. Again, 1676, he comes to the Virginia colony in 1671, and his hatred of indigenous people is visceral. He is trying to throw them out, and the governor of the Virginia colony says no. So he bands together in a multiracial movement to push them out. It is one of the first moments in time in the New World where people are working together. The reaction is swift. It leads to some of the first miscegenation laws of our country. Miscegenation is mixing of races through marriage or sexual relations. It defines whiteness. The laws that come as a reaction to this rebellion defines whiteness legally. It gives small provisions to indentured white servants that do not allow them to move up through society in any such form or fashion, but legally enshrines that they are better than the free black men and the enslaved black men and women. This is a beginning of a pattern of people working together, and we will see this many times throughout history, and every time that somebody pushes for this racial solidarity based in usually class solidarity, the reaction is insane. We'll see it later during the Wobblies being broken up, a labor movement both between black and white Americans. We'll see it again when Fred Hampton is murdered by the state. The FBI in cahoots with the Chicago Police Department, murdering him after creating the Rainbow Coalition because Fred Hampton didn't scare them as a leader alone, but when he brought in the Young Lords, the Puerto Rican groups, the Young Patriots, the poor white groups, the Brown Berets, the Students for a Democratic Society. That is what actually scared them. And you might be looking at me saying, Amy, I can't take responsibility for what happened in the 1600s. Of course you can't, and it's not your job to. But you need to understand the history of how we got to where we are today. Because that lie's been reaffirmed hundreds of times, every single day, in every single way. We see it through some of our presidents, like Lyndon Johnson, who said, if you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him someone to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. We see it in another president called Ronald Reagan, who portrays welfare queens as young black women who are siphoning money out of our government rather than working, which isn't the case, by the way. The most people on welfare and government assistance in the United States is and always has been white people. Why? Because there's more white people here than anyone else, and despite what people tell you, we are the majority. Therefore, we use the most services. And by the way, the services are there to help people get on their feet. And everyone should have access to them because we all pay into this system. It's affirmed legally and structurally through the Plessy versus Ferguson case, separate but equal in 1896, right? 30 years after the Civil War ends, 30 years after the largest voter enfranchisement in U.S. history, 30 years after over 2,000 free black men get elected across the Southeast, sending 2 black senators to D.C. from Mississippi. 30 years after that, the Supreme Court, the highest law in the land, says separate but equal is just fine. Legal discrimination from the highest court in the land, which leads to authoritarianism under Jim Crow. The GI Bill, after World War II, being given exclusively to white veterans and not black veterans. The redlining and the building of public housing from the U.S. government, forcing segregation in places there was never segregation before to protect white homeowners' property values. The systemic exclusion of black Americans from higher education and opportunities. It is in our psyche. And you might say, Amy, I am so liberal. I'm so highly educated. I am so intellectual. I could not have been hit with the stick of white supremacy, but you are, because we're in the system. This is a system of white supremacy. This is not you being a white supremacist. This is not me being a white supremacist. But being white in the United States means we have fallen prey to the system of white supremacy with 400 years of inertia at its back. So to push against this system, to find the identity of who we are, that is not this idea of we're not them, is complicated. It's hard, and it's work that you have to do inside of yourself first. You have to push back on the system every single day and in every single way. And then once you do it in yourself, you put it out into your family. And then you push it into the community. But the reason why I'm so focused on that James Baldwin quote is because we do not understand our own history. By design. They've lied to us. They know they've lied to us. We know they've lied to us. But to intellectually understand something versus digging into your own internal biases and focusing on what has actually been the norm in your life and in your brain is a different story. So, welcome to American Lies. We're going to keep doing this and we're going to talk about it forever. Because to make change in this country, we have to name the problem first. And when we name that problem, we then have to go after it with reckless abandon to change it. We should have ripped out the structures of white supremacy in our system after the Civil War, but we fucking didn't. We should have done it in the 60s, but we didn't. We should have never built a country the way that it exists today, but we are still operating under those exact same systems that were pre-Civil War. So it's up to us to make a decision to change things. And I know for a fact that if we created a system where every single person who hit the shores of the United States had the same opportunities, they were treated the same under the law, they had the same workers' rights, we would build something that could stand the test of time. I hope you'll come back. Every Friday, we're dropping this long form, and we keep pushing, and we work for change in ourselves, and then in our communities, and then we change our country together.